Before we dive deep into this philosophical journey, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. This isn't just content. It's a mirror that will show you truths about yourself you've been avoiding. Share this with someone who needs to wake up to what they've become online. Now let's begin. What if I told you that every time you open your phone, every scroll through social media, every digital interaction you think connects you to the world is actually trapping you deeper within yourself? What if the very technology you believe expands your reality is slowly suffocating your authentic existence? Korean-German philosopher Byung-Chul reveals a disturbing truth. We are living in what he calls the digital panopticon, a prison where we are simultaneously the prisoner, the guard, and the architect of our own confinement. But here's what makes it even more sinister. We built these walls willingly, believing they were windows to freedom. Think about your last hour online. How many times did you check your phone? How many notifications pulled your attention away from the present moment? You probably can't even remember, because you've become so accustomed to this fragmented existence that you no longer notice when your consciousness is being hijacked. Han argues that we've entered the age of what he calls digital totalitarianism. But it's not Big Brother watching you. It's something far more insidious. You are watching yourself, curating yourself, performing yourself for an invisible audience that never stops judging. Every photo you post, every comment you make, every story you share, you're not expressing your authentic self. You're creating a digital avatar that you then become enslaved to maintain. Consider this moment in your daily life. You're at a beautiful sunset, and instead of experiencing its beauty, your first instinct is to capture it for Instagram. But here's the philosophical trap Han identifies. In that moment, you're not living the experience. You're already thinking about how others will perceive your experience. You've become alienated from your own life, living it through the anticipated reactions of others. This isn't just about social media addiction. This is about a fundamental shift in human consciousness. Han explains that we've moved from a disciplinary society, where external forces controlled us, to what he calls a performance society, where we control ourselves more efficiently than any external authority ever could. We've internalized the panopticon. We are our own prison guards, and we're doing it for free. Every like you chase, every follower you gain, every metric you obsess over, these aren't connecting you to others. They're fragmenting your sense of self into quantifiable data points. You begin to see yourself not as a complete human being with depth, contradictions, and mystery, but as a collection of metrics to be optimized. Your worth becomes tied to engagement rates, and your identity becomes a brand to be managed. But here's where it gets even deeper. Han reveals that this digital existence doesn't just change how others see you, it fundamentally alters how you see yourself. You begin to think in hashtags. You start living for the content. Your experiences become raw material for your digital performance rather than moments of genuine human existence. The most terrifying part? You can't escape yourself online because the self you're trying to escape from is the very self that the digital world has created. It's a closed loop. You go online seeking validation, connection, distraction from your problems, but the online world only amplifies the very insecurities and fragmentations that drove you there in the first place. Think about when you feel most anxious, most empty, most disconnected. Is it when you're fully present in the physical world? Or is it after hours of scrolling, comparing, performing your digital self? The digital world promises connection but delivers isolation. Promises authenticity but rewards performance. Promises freedom but creates new forms of slavery. Han calls this the burnout society. We've become entrepreneurs of our own lives, constantly optimizing, constantly performing, constantly producing content from our own existence. But what happens when your life becomes your work, and your work becomes your identity? You burn out not from external pressure, but from the relentless pressure you put on yourself to maintain your digital persona. Every notification is a summons back to this performance. Every buzz of your phone is a reminder that your digital self needs maintenance. You've created a needy, demanding version of yourself that requires constant feeding, constant attention, constant validation. And the more you feed it, the hungrier it becomes. This is why you can't escape yourself online. The self you encounter in digital spaces isn't your authentic self. It's a commodified, optimized, performance-ready version that you've created. But over time, this digital self starts to colonize your offline existence. You begin to see the world through the lens of content creation. You start measuring real experiences by their potential for digital sharing. The ultimate irony? In trying to connect with others online, you lose connection with your own authentic experience. In trying to be seen and understood, you create a version of yourself that's fundamentally false. In seeking freedom through digital expression, you create new chains that bind you more completely than any external authority ever could. Han identifies something even more disturbing about our digital predicament, what he calls digital melancholia. You know that feeling when you're scrolling endlessly, consuming infinite content, yet feeling increasingly empty inside? That's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. The digital world has created a new form of depression that feeds on itself. Unlike traditional melancholia, which at least had an object, you were sad about something specific. Digital melancholia is objectless. You're sad about nothing and everything simultaneously. You're drowning in information but starving for meaning. You have access to all human knowledge but feel more ignorant than ever. You're connected to billions of people but profoundly alone. Here's a moment of brutal honesty. When was the last time you felt truly present? Not performing presence for a story or a post, but actually present in your own life. Most people can't remember, because presence has become a commodity to be captured and shared rather than a state to be experienced. Han reveals that we've entered what he calls the transparency society, a world where privacy isn't just invaded, it's voluntarily surrendered. You don't just share your thoughts and experiences. You've been conditioned to believe that unshared experiences are somehow less real. If it's not documented digitally, did it really happen? You've outsourced your memory to algorithms and your validation to strangers. But here's the philosophical trap that most people miss. Transparency doesn't create authenticity. It destroys it. When everything must be made visible, shareable, consumable, nothing can remain sacred, private, or genuinely personal. Your inner life becomes content for public consumption, and in doing so, it stops being genuinely yours. Consider your relationships. How many of your friendships exist primarily in digital spaces? How many of your connections are maintained through likes, comments, and shares rather than genuine human presence? Han argues that digital communication creates what he calls emotional labor. You're constantly managing impressions, curating responses, performing friendship rather than experiencing it. Even your solitude has been colonized. When you're alone, you're not really alone. You're accompanied by the phantom presence of your digital audience. You think in terms of what would make good content. You experience your own life as if you're watching it through the eyes of others. Your solitude becomes another performance venue. The economic dimension of this is crucial to understand. Han explains that in the digital age, you are not the customer, you are the product. But more than that, you're also the factory. You produce the data, the content, the engagement that generates profit for others, but you do it willingly, even eagerly, because it feels like self-expression. Every photo you post, every opinion you share, every click you make is labor, unpaid labor that generates enormous wealth for digital platforms. You've become what Han calls a digital proletariat. But unlike traditional workers, you don't recognize your exploitation because it's wrapped in the language of empowerment and self-expression. This is why attempts to detox from digital life often fail. You're not just breaking a habit, you're withdrawing from an economic system that has made you both worker and product. Your identity has become so intertwined with your digital production that stepping away feels like disappearing entirely. Han introduces the concept of digital exhaustion, the bone-deep tiredness that comes not from physical labor, but from the constant performance of self. You're exhausted not because you've done too much, but because you've been too much, constantly maintaining multiple versions of yourself across different platforms, constantly optimizing your image, constantly consuming and producing content. The tragedy is that this system promises to make you more yourself, more connected, more free, but it achieves the opposite. You become less yourself because yourself becomes a brand to be managed. You become less connected because digital connection substitutes for genuine human encounter. You become less free because your freedom becomes circumscribed by algorithms and engagement metrics. Here's a disturbing thought experiment. Imagine your phone died right now and couldn't be replaced for a month. What would happen to your sense of self? Would you still know who you are without the constant feedback loop of digital validation? Most people realize they wouldn't, and that realization is terrifying. Han argues that we're living in what he calls the swarm, not a collective with shared purpose and identity, but an aggregation of isolated individuals who mistake digital connection for genuine community. The swarm has no memory, no continuity, no depth. It reacts, it moves, it consumes, but it doesn't think or feel or grow in any meaningful way. You are part of this swarm even when you think you're being individual or rebellious online. The very act of expressing your uniqueness through digital platforms makes you part of the system you think you're resisting. Your rebellion becomes content, your authenticity becomes performance, your resistance becomes engagement. The most insidious aspect of this digital imprisonment is that it doesn't feel like imprisonment. It feels like liberation. Every new platform promises more connection, more expression, more opportunity to be yourself. But Han reveals that these promises are illusions. Each new digital space becomes another venue for the same performance, another stage for the same exhausting act of digital self-maintenance. This is why you can't escape yourself online, because the self you encounter there isn't really you. It's a digital ghost that haunts your authentic existence, demanding constant attention, constant feeding, constant performance. And the more you try to escape it by going deeper into digital spaces, the more powerful and demanding it becomes. So how do we break free from this digital prison we've built for ourselves? Han doesn't offer easy solutions because there aren't any. The first step is recognition, understanding that what feels like freedom is actually a sophisticated form of control, and what feels like connection is actually a new form of isolation. The path to liberation begins with what Han calls contemplative practice, the deliberate cultivation of experiences that cannot be digitized, shared, or commodified. This means spending time in genuine solitude, not the performed solitude of social media, but real solitude where you're not thinking about how to capture or share the experience. It means having conversations that aren't content, relationships that aren't networking, experiences that aren't optimized for digital sharing. It means allowing yourself to be bored, to be unproductive, to exist without purpose or goal or metric. But here's the challenge. Once you've been colonized by digital consciousness, returning to authentic presence requires deliberate practice. You must retrain your attention, which has been fragmented by notifications and constant stimulation. You must rediscover your own voice, which has been shaped by algorithmic feedback loops. Han suggests we need to recover what he calls vita contemplativa, the contemplative life that allows for depth, reflection, and genuine encounter with ourselves and others. This isn't about nostalgia for a pre-digital past, but about creating spaces of resistance within our current reality. The most radical act in our digital age isn't posting the perfect selfie or crafting the most viral content. It's choosing not to document an experience, not to share a thought, not to perform your life for others. It's choosing presence over presentation, being over seeming, authenticity over optimization. This requires what Han calls digital resistance, not the complete rejection of technology, but the conscious choice to use it as a tool rather than allowing it to use you. It means setting boundaries, creating offline spaces, choosing when to connect and when to disconnect. But perhaps most importantly, it means recognizing that the person you are online is not the person you truly are. The digital self is a construction, a performance, a commodity. It is not your essence. Your worth is not measured in likes. Your identity is not your brand. Your relationships are not your network. The real you exists in the spaces between posts, in the moments you don't document, in the thoughts you don't share, in the experiences you don't optimize. The real you is found not in digital spaces but in genuine encounter with yourself, with others, with the world as it actually is rather than as it appears through a screen. Han's ultimate message is both warning and invitation. The warning: we are in danger of losing our humanity to digital systems that profit from our fragmentation and exhaustion. The invitation: we can choose differently. We can reclaim our attention, our presence, our authentic existence. But this choice must be made consciously, deliberately, and repeatedly. It's not a one-time decision but a practice, a way of being that must be cultivated in a world designed to pull you back into digital performance. The question isn't whether you can escape yourself online. The question is whether you're willing to discover who you really are when you stop performing, stop optimizing, stop seeking validation from strangers, and start living your own life for your own authentic reasons. That's the path to freedom that Byung-Chul offers us. Not escape from the digital world, but liberation from the illusion that the digital world is where our real lives happen. Your real life is happening right now, in this moment, in your actual body, in your present experience. Don't miss it for a notification. If this reflection has opened your eyes to something you needed to see, subscribe to this channel for more philosophical insights that challenge you to live more authentically. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and explore our playlist of deep philosophical reflections. Your journey toward authentic existence starts with the next choice you make about how you engage with the digital world. Choose wisely.